Hi, I'm Lynn from Ink Sugar Spice, and today I'm going to show you my best pizza dough recipe. I have a couple of other pizza dough recipes, but not like this one. This one is something else and makes gorgeous pizza and garlic bread. Right, where do we start? We start with the flour. I'd like you to use tipo doppio zero, that's 00 flour, if you can get it. That's the Italian fine white plain flour. If you can't get this, then you can substitute 50% plain flour or all-purpose flour if you're in the US with strong white bread flour. I'll put the recipe underneath so you can have a look and on my website. I have got 435 grams of doppio zero, tipo 00 flour in here. And to this, I'm going to add 4 grams, just 4 grams of fast-acting dried yeast. I'll pop that in one side. I've got 10 grams of fine salt. I'll pop that in opposite. I've got a mix of finely chopped herbs here. As you can see, it's just a large handful. I haven't really weighed this. Pop that in. We also need a tablespoon of a good quality extra virgin olive oil. There we go. Add that in. And I've got here 255 grams or millilitres of tepid water. Just going to mix that in. And my last but really crucial ingredient is a large teaspoon of my sourdough starter. Now, as I say, it's got to be at the lively stage. As I say, this is my best pizza dough recipe. But if you don't have sourdough starter to hand, you can just use 7 grams of the fast-acting yeast. It's not quite the same, but you'll still get a pretty good pizza dough. So there we go. What we're going to do is I'm going to mix it by hand. I'm going to leave it in a big scruffy mess and we're going to let it rest for a while. So I'll show you what it looks like once I've just mixed it round. You can use a fork, you can use a dough whisk. I always use my hands because I come back and knead anyway. So here we go, just mixing it round. Getting all the liquid ingredients, that's the yeast, the oil and the water, into the dough as much as possible. And as you can see, it's a big scruffy mess, and now we're going to let that rest for between 20 and 30 minutes, and we'll come back and we'll show you the kneading. So I've rested my dough for about 20 minutes. Still looks like a scraggy mess, trying to get as much as possible. This dough recipe should, if you followed it and you've used the same ingredients, use either no or very little additional flour, even to flour the table and to stop the dough sticking. So we just need to knead it probably for about 5 to 6 minutes, just like you would do any other bread. I'm going to turn the camera off and we'll come back when I've finished kneading. So I've nearly finished kneading. I've been kneading for about 4 minutes. I'm just going to use my dough scraper rather than extra flour to ensure that all my dough is coming up off my table. And as I do my last few stretches on my dough, I'm actually going to oil. Well, first of all, I'm going to rub off as much dough as I possibly can so I don't lose any. I don't want this going in the bin or down the sink. I want it going in my bread. I'm just going to oil my hands a little. So as I do the last few kneads, I add a little bit of extra olive oil into the dough, and it helps lift it from the table and do its final shape. What we're going to do now is rest it nice and glossy and nice and smooth. just tucking it into a ball shape. You can use your scraper to do this. Tiny last bit of olive oil. Just pat it round, and I'm going to put it back in the same bowl that we used to mix it originally. I know it's still got a little bit of flour in, but actually that's absolutely fine. Now we're going to rest this for 30 minutes if it's a hot day and up to 60 minutes if it's a much cooler day, and we'll come back in a short while. I've rested my dough for 40 minutes. It's nice and stretchy and pliable, but it's not risen much, which is characteristic of using a plain flour. Pop that to one side for a moment. Now I'm just going to roughly chop it in half. Quite often I measure this, and you can if you want, but for this purpose I'm just going to put one aside and we'll work on one dough, and we're going to shape it. I like to shape my dough by hand to start off with, get a feel for it, start to get it into shape. Don't forget to constantly flip it over. Now, try and use as little flour as possible, and if possible, absolutely none at all. This dough will make 2 really good 12-inch pizzas or pizza bases or garlic breads. Now start to roll. You may find that you need to flour your rolling pin a little. Also, don't worry too much about shape. It doesn't matter if it's not a perfect circle. I've shaped both pieces of dough. My pizza trays have actually got holes in them, which is great for shop bought pizzas, but as you can see I make my own. And while they're resting, you do not want your dough to sag through the holes. So what I've done is I've made a little baking parchment circle around that fits in the inside of the pizza trays. And now these are ready to rest again, half an hour in a warm environment and up to an hour in a cooler environment. As you can see, you can still see the beautiful flecks of the herbs all the way through them. Cover them with a clean tea towel, and we'll come back probably in this weather for me in about 40 minutes, and we'll get them ready for the oven. My bases have been resting for about 40 minutes, and although they've not risen a lot, they've risen a little bit, and you can tell the difference on the edges and also the change in condition of the dough. Now you can go ahead and make pizzas with these, but I'm going to make garlic breads, and with this I've got 2 different types of garlic bread. On this first one I've got garlic butter and 1 thinly sliced large waxy potato, so something like a Jersey Royal. And on this one, again with the garlic butter, and I've used about half a ball of mozzarella. And in my garlic butter I have about 150 grams of unsalted butter, and that's enough for the 2 bases. I've got a huge handful of basil and curly leaf parsley, some rock salt and a lot of garlic, but I like a lot of garlic, so add it to your taste. And I split that 50-50 between the 2 bases. So these are ready to bake now. Turn your oven on when you're almost ready to bake these and you're putting your toppings on. I'm going to be cooking in a fan oven at 240 degrees C, but if you're using top and bottom heat or you don't have a fan oven, it's 260, and you only need to cook these for about 14 minutes and they're ready. So into a hot oven, and we'll see what they look like afterwards. My garlic breads have been cooking for 14 minutes and I've just let them cool a little so I can show you. But look how gorgeous they've puffed up. They're nice and crispy, they're so soft on the inside. On this one, the potatoes are just starting to crisp and the golden garlic butter is just beautiful. And on this one, the garlic butter and the mozzarella have melded together and it's just gorgeous. As I mentioned, it makes just superb pizza bases too. So I hope you give my recipe a try. I'll put some basics here, but my full recipe I'll put on www.inksugarspice.com. You can ask me any questions about it as usual, and I hope to see you again.